friends and familiars. This is another amazing, outstanding, spooktacular episode of Macabre Monthly. This is one of your hosts, Matt Orozco, and I'm joined with my other host,
Lowell Greenblatt. How's it going, folks?
Heyo. So, bam, bam, hip hop air horn. So it's July and it's warm, uncomfortably so in some parts of this country. Lowell, how are you keeping cool in the summer?
Lots of air conditioning and fans to spread out the air conditioning. I'm surprised I haven't been to the beach yet because it's mid-July, but I know I'll get there eventually. Though possibly in September when it's a little cooler because the earth is dying, y'all. I
Yeah.
can't. I step outside and I'm just instantly like, no,
Yep.
just no. Yeah. How
I
about
People ask me how I stay cool and I say I don't go outside. That's although the weather here in Ohio isn't awful, it's very muggy. And you're right, the world is dying. Every day is another horror movie. But nevertheless, we are surviving. It's been a pretty interesting summer for horror movies, I will say. I know we're going to get into what we've been watching, and I know both of us have seen two of the most anticipated horror movies of the year. So I figure we'll spend a little bit of time talking about Longlegs and Maxine to get us going, because I know since we've
that could be the
recorded
whole
this,
day, but yeah.
it could. Um, but I know that those are two that have released since we last recorded. And yeah, those have been really profound box office draws. So let's start with Maxine because let's go chronological order.
Okay.
How excited were you for Maxine?
I was cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
Uh, I was a little excited because I wanted to see how they would land this plane, even though, and I thought this a little bit going in, but it really hit me coming out of Maxine that they're three just totally different films.
Yep.
You know, they might share some characters, but they're about different people. They're totally different types of horror films. Like, you could put on, if you like watch all three, or like even watch, X after Pearl or Maxine after X, you'll be thrown like, wait, this comes after that, and I think that might be by design. So I was curious to see what they did, and I'm glad I
Yeah.
saw it in the theater, and I will be seeing it again in the future for sure. What about you?
I was probably too excited for it, to be honest. And I think that's because a really well-cut trailer sends shivers up my spine. And that trailer, that first trailer he put out, was a real banger. And I also think I had some illusions that it was going to be different than it was, but not, it wasn't that it was that different. I actually kind of hoped it would be a little bit more like late cycle 80s Giallo sleazy. Instead, it was more like Brian De Palma,
Mm-hmm.
American sleazy. But I was pretty excited, which kind of lends to the next question on like how did you feel after it? Going into it kind of lukewarm, curious, but not super
Um,
hyped.
well, I walked out and I was like, I did love like the epilogue, like the very end. Um, I was mixed to positive. I give it 3 stars out of 5. I did like it overall. It is not without its flaws. I understand if you were really hyped for this, I could see you being disappointed, but like ultimately it was okay, and I feel like I'm gonna get more from it on a rewatch, as I will with the other movie that we're going to talk about. But just there were some choices that were just kind of puzzling to
Mm.
me, man. All these, the spoilers are at, I'll keep it to a minimum, but all the criticisms that I've heard are basically the criticisms I would make. The identity of the killer just is like, oh, okay. And in the reveal for that scene, she like doesn't have any dialogue. It's just like the killer talking, and it's like, she gonna say something? And just the fact that like there are times where she's like really passive in her own story, and I guess that's not really the Maxine that we know from X. But but I mean, it was Ty West doing sleazy '80s Hollywood. I had fun with it. Great soundtrack.
Yeah.
One of the dumbest deaths of the year in there. But also like that final shot was great. Like
Yeah.
not over the credits, but just as the credits roll, like her last line and then that shot, I'm like beautiful. So I was okay with it. What about you?
Um, I
Less.
think, yeah, I mean, I forget what I gave it on Letterboxd, probably somewhere between a 3 and a 3.5. And I had a friend rightly say, like, why did you, why do you not like a movie that you rated at a 3 and a 3.5? And it's like, well, because I think my expectation of it is different than what I got, but I also can appreciate some really well-made movie when I see it. And I think that that's really what I walked away from it is like, this is a, Ty West has demonstrated across 3 films that he is very good at Tarantinoing genre movies, which is basically taking it, chewing it up, and like regurgitating it in his own way. And I think with X and Pearl and Maxine, you're getting a glimpse of basically all of Ty West's seemingly filmic inspirations turned into his own kind of quasi trilogy. Which you're right, they are almost all 3 separate movies, which I venture to guess in 10 years from now, the future Letterboxd reviewers will say something like, this was profoundly genius. How no one could see this?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I give it that much credit. What I would say is that it's really well made. It's really well done. It doesn't necessarily do a good job with the scripting. And I think if you look at both Pearl and X, neither one of them has the strongest script. Like X, you could probably accuse it a bit of meandering, and especially the lead up.
Mm-hmm.
Pearl is Pearl just drops you in and doesn't even give you quarters for a ride home. It's just like, yeah, you're here now. This is a totally different movie, and it
You're
continue.
trapped in an Uber with Mia Goth. Fucking deal with it.
Yeah, like it's like you've just been lost in Pleasantville for the next 90 minutes, but it's a really fucked up version of it. So I think that just in that way, Ty West succeeded. I think he made kind of 3 representations of his film love, like why he basically made love letters to movies and genres he loves through, and I think that in that way it works. I do want to see it of all of the movies, the 2 movies we're going to talk about in detail right now. This is the one I'm most in excited to rewatch again because
Mm-hmm.
I do think that my once expectations have subsided, I'll probably be able to view it a little bit more as it's intended as opposed to what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And that's another thing is that it really, really falls under the burden of being like the third and final film.
yeah.
Like I feel like in the future, if someone sees it without knowing about X and Pearl, maybe they would like it more. But because it's like the last movement of like this trilogy, our expectations are ridiculously high,
And they
or at
were
least,
set high. Like,
yeah, we're set high.
I mean, they came out swinging with. I mean, how many people could you recognize in X and Pearl by name except for Mia Goth
Mm-hmm.
and I forget Kid Cudi's actual name, but
Stop.
uh,
Why do I
yeah.
know that? Mm-hmm.
But and there was another. Oh, what's her name? She was in Cabin Fever. The blonde woman, Brittany Snow.
Brittany wasn't in Cabin Fever, but
No.
Brittany's. Yeah.
So yeah, like they're known names, but they're known to us genre folk because these are genre actors. Whereas Maxine had Kevin Bacon, it had Giancarlo
Anna
Esposito,
Fuller.
yeah,
Yeah.
Halsey. Like it was pretty much just like um, it was a lineup, a lineup, and it would they all turn in great performances. So, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's more to view this. I think looking at this with different eyes will give me a different experience. I don't know if it'll change my opinion of it wildly, because
Mm-hmm.
I think the bones of the movie are fine. It's just the stuff that's heaped around it doesn't always work. And I think a lot of that has to do with just spending too much time in that. It's like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Hollywood. You spend way too much time in this world just trying to live in it rather than actually see a story told through it. And by the time the
So,
story catches up, it's kind of like, okay, this should have come a little bit sooner.
yeah,
um,
I get that.
which brings us to the possibly the most divisive horror movie of the year.
For you,
Is
maybe. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
I mean, if I'm following the internet's reactions, then I would say that this movie is causing divorces and could also be a cause for climate change at this point because of how much heat is generating. But it's long legs. So I'm going to skip past the expectations. I think it's almost impossible not to have extremely high expectations for this movie based on the extremely successful marketing campaign. So let's go right into like, what did you think of Long Legs?
I really liked it. It's on my top 10 of the year for horror and for films in general, because I'm me. I have to have 2 years for that. Uh, I mean, two lists for that.
Of
I don't
course.
rank, but I dug it. I don't know if it necessarily lived up to the hype, but I feel like I got a full Oz Perkins experience. And, like his other movies, especially Black Coat's Daughter, I know that I'm missing information that I'm going to get more on a second viewing. Like with movies like this, I feel like it kind of gets muddled what is meant to be ambiguous, where I sort of fill in my own blanks, and what is information that he's giving me that I'm not picking up on, and
Yeah.
I still feel like there's some stuff that I missed, but even going back and reading some of the dialogue, I'm like, yeah, that was definitely like that. I won't spoil it, but there's a huge twist in it that is really right under our noses the whole time. And I look forward to going back and picking that apart. It was scary. It was well acted, maybe a little obtuse in some areas, but the final picture of it, like the way it all came together, was just fantastic. I still like Black Coat's Daughter better, but just overall, yeah, I think he did it. I think this movie has legs. uh,
Hey.
hey, yeah. What about you, sir?
Um,
Agreed. Moving on.
um, I do not think it's a bad movie, but I think that it is like I don't. It's
Okay.
because there's nothing like objectively bad about it. It's like I would say that like this movie isn't causing me to wake up in cold sweats out of hate. Um, but I also think it's got its head so far up its ass that it doesn't. And some of this may be on some bias that I bring to this, having read an interview with Osgood Perkins before it. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy sounds like an asshole, which is like, um, and so I kind of was viewing it under this lens of like this guy who doesn't like horror movies, who doesn't really watch horror movies and hates true crime is making his version of Silence of the Lambs. And what I'm watching is a like and he even said that in an interview is like, oh, no one's made a Silence of the Lambs movie in a while. I'm like, are you fucking high? Like you disregarding over 2 decades of thrillers. So anyway, I think that this movie has to the point of like why I don't love it is because it's not a good procedural. It doesn't it you could
Not really interested in being a procedural,
of
really.
course it is. Of course it
At
is.
parts it is, at parts, but it's not meant to be Silence of the Lambs. And in fact, when I kept hearing people compare it to Silence of the Lambs before, and yes, he's right, there are some obvious parallels with this and Silence of the Lambs, but the people who are like, it's the next Silence of the Lambs, haven't seen Silence of the Lambs in a very long time. It is like night and day with this movie. You can count on one hand the things that this movie has in common with that. Like, have you seen the
Androgynous serial killer that makes things with their hands like
interrogation scene?
no
Young
no
FBI
no, no
agent.
but yeah, but the young FBI agent, it's more so that this young FBI agent has experienced some trauma, like traumatized FBI agent who is still trying to
Has,
prove their worth.
has she? Well, that might be a spoiler, but yeah, okay.
Or that she's psychic, right? They kind of allude to that she might have some sort of uncanny abilities. um the serial killer is going after women, right? In this case, it's children, but it's also families.
Well,
So it's some
Emily's
sort
more.
of taboo topic matter to some of sorts. Um, and yeah, I mean that's not enough to make yourself a Silence of the Lambs. But then if you look at the shot for shot lifts that he pretty much took from, and again, homage is different than, I don't think he's copying Silence of the Lambs. I don't think the comparisons to that are fair. I don't think it should have ever been done. But he himself has acknowledged that this was the inspiration for the movie. So one
Well,
has,
yes, I
yeah,
get that. It was definitely an inspiration, but people are talking, and maybe this isn't his fault because it's the hype machine. But people keep talking about how, oh, this is totally Silence of the Lambs. This is the next Silence of the Lambs, and it's not.
no.
He picks and chooses, but he ultimately makes an Oz Perkins movie, whether you like it or not.
And that might be the crux of this, is that I don't think I really like Oz Perkins movies. I need to rewatch The Black Coat's Daughter, but I remember seeing it
Oh,
the first time and remembering it was a 3 and a 5, 3 out of 5, because I'm like, this takes a very long time to give you a very cool, the ending works very well. It's the lead up to the ending that can feel just kind of pointless. Um, but again, I
just
need to rewatch it because
yeah.
it's been probably 4 years since I've seen it, and I watched it on a plane. So the ability
Uh,
to take it in as it's intended is not there. But I also tried watching The Pretty Little Thing in the House a while back when that came out, and I couldn't really get
that was
into it.
okay. Yeah.
But I guess going back to like this one, there's just a lot about it that doesn't work well as the movie it's trying to be. If it's trying to be a procedural, it's not a good one. If it's trying to be a horror movie, it's not really a horror movie. It's not a good one. It's just kind of a lot of scary. It's just a lot of really good filmmaking with very little story to go along with it. And so it's like, because the story itself is pretty simple. Guy
Mhm.
makes dolls, dolls kill people.
But they don't
They
like don't
well,
move, but like an antenna. But yeah,
yeah, but
okay.
the dog the guy is essentially a serial killer who doesn't actually kill anybody.
Hmm.
Which is an interesting concept. Like that in and of itself is a very interesting idea. A serial killer who doesn't actually kill his victims. Genius. But instead we get this kind of satanic twist, which I actually didn't mind the satanic twist. I think I minded more the red herring, that the massive red herring in the movie, which kind of totally diverts your attention one way and then fucking send it to something so obvious the next. Um, I just don't think it's. I think, and again, I need to rewatch it because I think some of this has a lot to do with my own like what I don't know what I was expecting. It just wasn't that.
Hmm.
Um, but there's a lot that did work for me. It's like I thought Nicolas Cage's performance, even though it's kind of off the fucking wall, I think it does work.
And right. Hmm.
Like I think it's probably the best part of the movie because that there is something unhinged about it, and I think that that's what's interesting. But there's a lot more about it like that doesn't make sense. Like if this guy was perfectly successful delivering these dolls, why did he need, help, right? um
Well, that getting in spoiler territory, I don't think the dolls happened until a certain point, and then before I think there was something else.
hmm.
And that's another thing. I don't. To me, Longlegs isn't like the villain of this. He's just a tool. Like the real villain is Satan. And this movie like made me believe in Satan. Like seriously, I'm like, oh my god, like because you're watching it, you're like, is it supernatural? Is it not supernatural? And then when you realize like the specificity of how supernatural it is and what the overall plan is at the very end, it's like, and Black Coat's Daughter is like that too. Like when it ends, it all comes together, you know. And I feel
Yeah,
like that's just something he likes to do, and it worked for me. The day might come when it doesn't, but he's 2 for 2 in my eyes.
yeah, and listen, like I have no, I don't think anyone's wrong for liking the movie. Like that's not
And
by
I
any means.
totally get people who really don't like it, even more so than you. I get people who love it. I get people who hate it. It's just personally, I really liked it. You're not crazy if you don't like this movie.
No, and I just, but I also think that it's just not like for what I look for in a horror movie. This doesn't hit almost. It hits almost none of the boxes.
Mhm.
And I think I don't know why everyone is so obsessed with Micah Monroe. I actually liked her quite a bit in The Guest. I think The Guest is the best movie she's been in, but I'm also not an It Follows fan, so I have to remove myself from that conversation on the basis of that alone. But in this
Mhm.
movie, I just didn't like. I guess I'm not supposed to care about these people, but I really don't care about her. I don't really care. The performance is just so vacant, and I guess that's supposed to be the point. But and I don't blame her actually. I blame the direction more than anything because I don't think she acted that way without someone telling her to act that way.
Yeah.
So I
A
don't know.
Christian
It's
phenomenon. Yeah.
yes. So it's like again, not a bad movie. It's not a movie for me by a long shot. Which is okay because you know not all movies have to be for all people. I do think just like Ari Aster, if you give Osgood Perkins a really good screenwriter, you will see some amazing fucking horror movies, like just amazing movies. They don't have to be horror movies, but him and Ari Aster have to share the similar problem of not really knowing how to tell their stories in a way where it just happens instead of they have to kind of at one point someone has to tell you what's going on or else nobody knows what's going on. So you get them a really good screenwriter in there, man. The amazing move work that they could do, potentially even putting them together. I don't know, maybe two negatives make a plus in this case, but um, I
It's one movie, but yeah.
but I do want to see it. Like I do want to see it again. Or sorry, no, I do want to see it again because I don't think that that first reaction can be trusted anymore. And I do think with time and a little bit of like patience settled, it's a little bit easier to view things as intended as opposed to how we kind of are expected to or think they're going to be. Um, so yeah, not bad movies. Definitely things I'm eager to rewatch. But you know what? They did great at the box office. Especially Long Legs. It is fucking cleaning house. I think it's over 44 million at this point.
Awesome.
Um,
Love it.
and that's like I think four times the budget. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Long Legs is this Halloween. I'm looking forward to it.
I would love to see the people try and do their best version of, long legs. I don't. It's like what's his name? Tiny Tim has
Mm.
been afflicted by the same disease that the Elephant Man had. I forget what the
Yeah.
long name for it is, but it's basically the same look. And apparently, Nick Cage got that inspiration from seeing his mom put on Noxzema when he was younger.
Yeah, he said the inspiration for him wasn't Tiny Tim, it was his mom.
I
Like
don't
in
believe
the
there was no Tiny Tim in that fucking inspiration in that vision board
yeah.
somewhere because he sounds just fucking like him. But anyway, stringy hair, all that shit.
And also, I mean, massive props to a movie that starts with a quote from Bang a Gong, Get It On. And then it's like, this is a really I'm going to give you a terrifying horror movie. Here's Bang a Gong, Get It On. And it's like, not even the song, but just an isolated quote from it. It's like, wow, really? And then you realize, oh, yeah, that is very, very apt. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Again, maybe it's one of those things that like will deliver more fruits upon additional rewatches. Um, but that's those two major hitters. So is there anything else you've been watching that you're keen on? Anything you've been dying to
Um,
chat about?
Not so much. I rewatched the original Wes Craven Hills Have Eyes.
Okay.
Uh, so some fun desert grindhouseness. Really dug it. Um, I rewatched Aliens because I got the 4K. Freaking great. Almost don't really consider it a horror movie. It's not a
Yeah.
it has horror scenes in it, but it is not a horror movie. And it makes me curious to go back to Alien, but like I think it's a fool's errand to watch Aliens and then hot off of that go into Alien because they are so different, which we've talked about before. And I watched Crumbcatcher from Glass
Oh
Eye
yeah.
Pix, their second film they put out this year after Blackout. Um, it's kind of like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf meets Cheap Thrills, but no one microwaves a dog. Just like crazy black comedy with just some weird, awkward shit in it. But yeah, it's Glass Eye. They know what they're doing, and I had fun with it. What about you?
Well, my movie of the year so far is Oddity, and that's one I checked
Oh,
out
right.
about a week ago, or a couple weeks ago. I have been waiting so long for people to go and see it. And so Damien McCarthy, same guy who did Caveat, which was a huge hit for me. This is kind of like his Conjuring universe that he's creating, which is
Okay.
I think is kind of great. Focusing on these weird cursed objects and the weird people around them. And I think Oddity is just I mean the title could not be more appropriate because it really does it's not at all about what you think it's going to be about based on what you see. Wait, which if you just look at the poster, you
Mhm.
would not get any of what you're getting. Um, and it's fucking hilarious. Like it is extremely good at balancing very dark but also very funny humor with some genuinely shocking and suspenseful moments. And I'm not someone who like I don't get not to say this to sound hard or anything. I don't movies don't scare me as much because the real world is very terrifying as it is. So I feel like nothing I see on a movie is gonna anywhere come near anywhere close some of the shit that happens every day. But I still get rocked by a few jump scares, and this one definitely got me a few times. And again, it's got really good sense of humor that I think that can't be understated as far as how it breaks up the tension. This place, this world that he's created is almost like it's just a degree off of like normalcy. You can tell that there's something weird, like, this woman is a blind woman who owns a curiosity shop, and her whole deterrent from getting people to not steal things is like, oh, everything's cursed. So nothing's, I don't do undo the curse until you buy it. So there's just all this kind of weirdness around it. I love it. I think it's, for me, so far, the top horror movie of the year. Um, and I think it's just because I love it's just if you liked Caveat, it just it's an extension of that with more production value, more intricate story, and is slightly bigger, but not that much bigger, just a little bit bigger in scope. I think that's out in theaters now. It will be on Shudder, I believe, in the next month or so. I think it's going to hit.
Awesome. Waiting
Um,
for it.
s- and then I did a rewatch as I was doing some reorganization yesterday of Lost Highway, a David Lynch film.
Mm.
Um, I don't know why I like this movie. I cannot tell you. Someone were to ask me to give you reasons why it's a good movie, I would say I don't know. It's not a great movie. I gave I think a 3.5 out of 5. So I rewatched it yesterday.
Anything three or over, that's a
I mean, but it's
recommend.
just I think I take it as David Lynch's version of an home invasion movie.
Let it.
Um, and take that as you will. But it's probably one of the more coherent Lynch movies. So as far as that goes, it is a little bit easier to follow. But it's also one prompted me to want to watch some other movies from his back catalog that I haven't seen in a while, like Blue Velvet. So that's probably going to be next up on the list. I'm not a big Lynch guy in general. I find him to be a very 3 out of 5 star director for me. But I do appreciate the artistry in filmmaking.
Yeah, I
So
always found him pretty impenetrable, but that's just a me problem. And I know people who swear by him, and I'm like, I want to get to where you are. I just don't know if I can. I'm gonna try. I think I've tried to watch Blue Velvet twice. I will try again. I will keep trying.
I think I've just resigned. I think it's more for me is like I've tried watching David Lynch movies when I was not at a mental state to be the audience for them. So like I watched for my first time seeing Lost Highway was when it like came out on video. Like I was not old enough to not see it because there's nothing wildly objectionable in it. It's more just I wasn't yeah, my teenage brain could not possibly comprehend the breakdown of space and time on camera this way. And I agree with you. I wish I could see what Lynch fans see in Lynch movies. Instead, it's just like I kind of look at it as like a going to a museum. You're not really supposed to understand anything. You're just supposed to look at it and observe it and see how it makes you feel. And that's kind of how I feel about all David Lynch's movies. It's just you're supposed to experience them.
Vibes, baby. Just vibes.
Yeah, pure vibes. Well, that's it for the list of watches. But as shouldn't be, well, everyone should know by now, we uh we run ourselves a little website here called Macabre Daily. Um and yeah, you should definitely check it out, macabredaily.com, on Instagram, Macabre Daily. But we got a little bit of news to cover. It's been a while. First one being Second Sight is having what can only be called the best year ever, which is
Yeah,
really hard to say because they had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4K release come out last year. But they're putting out Adam Wingard's You're Next. And I know you're a new indoctorate to the Region Free Club. Is that a true statement now, Lowell?
Yeah, I had a 4K player, but it didn't play region free Blu-rays. So I did get a 4K player that played region free Blu-rays, and I immediately bought Inside in May from Second Sight. They're coming in the mail. I can't wait. But I pre-ordered this as soon as it was announced, because yeah, it's a new version of Your Next, and yeah, they are. I was It Follows this year from them. I don't even
Yeah,
know. They're on a hot streak, the likes of which we haven't seen since like the early days of Screen Factory, or maybe
yeah.
that's not fair to say, not the early days, but like they're an up and comer. They're the Hansel of physical media right now. They're
Yep.
so hot right now, and they're killing it. So I'm excited for this.
Yeah. I mean, just to go off what they released this year alone, High Tension, Inside, May. I think was Martin this year or last year? I think Martin was last year.
The Texas Chainsaw, but still, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the past 2 years, they've been really ramping things up, but this year it feels like they're just coming out, you know, fully cocked. And I'm so glad you're now a part of the Region Free Club. Um, God, there's and if you and for those listening, you have to go find and pick up their Hitcher 4K. This thing has been in the making for what feels like almost a decade. And so the fact that they finally got it to this place. And by the way, one thing to call out about Second Sight, they're one of the only boutique labels that has not had to recall a disc in recent memory. They have not put out a bad disc. I don't know. Again, I don't have all the releases, but I will say of the ones I've gotten, there's none have required a replacement disc where it seems like almost every other disc from some other companies these days is requiring a replacement. So I don't know what that says, but this is exciting.
Quality control.
Quality control. So, Alexandra Aja has a new movie coming out. Have you watched this trailer yet for Never Let Go?
Yeah, it looks very Quiet Place ish, but I like Aja. I'm curious what it's going to be. Unless the reviews are terrible, it's I'm going to give it a look. But
Yeah,
yeah, curious.
I I am super curious because you're right. It does kind of have a little bit of a Quiet Place feel to it, but I think that's just because we have like a mom and kids on the front. When I watched the trailer, it felt a little bit more like a Quiet Place, but instead of it being like, I don't know, it did feel like a Quiet Place. I'm trying to explain away something different here,
I
but
mean, that's I think that was also part of the point. I still haven't seen day one though. I know I have to because I hear it's
uh,
one of the best of the year.
yeah, I've heard that as well. But I also just am not excited to go back to that world anytime soon. Like to me, the Quiet Place movies were always very meh. But anyways, if they've got good creatures in this thing, and we get Aja doing Aja, what he does best, I think this will be a good one. So we'll see.
Cool.
Speaking of the Hitcher 4K, so again, Second Sight proving why to everybody why physical media is still necessary. As Lowell and I were just talking about, this thing absolutely needs to be picked up. This actually isn't one of my favorite movies either. Like I think it's quite good, but it's I think just let alone for the amount of effort that's gone into making this and bringing this to light and knowing that it probably won't get this ever again given all the rights issues that it took to get it to this state. Funny fact, we're not even allowed to really do much promotion for this anymore. I was working with the PR firm and they said we're actually not allowed to promote like do like reviews and or review copies or anything in the US for this, which I imagine has something to do with the rights issues
This release or for Second Sight in general?
for this release, this specific release.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
but I love that they're giving it an Atmos track. And again, just the special features alone are on these are worth the price of
100
admission.
pages. They usually do 70. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and those books are if you aren't reading your booklets that come in your really nice special editions, you are doing yourself a disservice. Some absolutely astounding and well-written stuff from the folks from the likes of Zoe Rose Smith in there. Um, I
Alexandra
forget that.
Bliss, who has a commentary track. I always spring for the special editions of Second Sight because I love the stuff they come with.
Yeah, if someone could pay me to write those essays, like if someone could pay me, really good money to live off on and enjoy all the luxuries of life just to write those essays, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But, wish in one hand, shit in the other, see which one fills up first. So, um, I know you had a chance to talk
Hey,
to Mr. Adam Green.
I did. Hey, I wrote that article.
You
There's my name.
did. So, how was
Yeah,
it? How was it talking to the man, the myth behind Victor Crowley?
it was cool and a little surreal because I've been listening to his podcast for like 10 years. And now he's talking to me and saying my name, which is a little nuts. And yeah, it was just cool. This I think is a really special release because I think Lionsgate owns Hatchet and Dark Sky owns the rest of the film. So like with The Hitcher, they did some mojo to make it come together. But it was cool to go back a little bit. And he told some stories that he's told a little bit over the years, but it was cool to hear what's like. There's new stuff on the disc that's really interesting because he's always been very generous with physical media features, and he didn't skimp out here. But yeah, it was cool to talk the early days of. Uh, I'm like looking through and like reading it
This
now.
was wild. This was part here was wild. The 11
I
day shoot.
Yeah, I knew it was like a short amount of time. Like it says, I thought it was 18, but it was like 11, and it was just cool. He's like, he started his own cottage industry of horror with Arioscope, and it's just like it's cool to see where he's been, and now these films are being celebrated again. You know, it
So
was
how's the compendium of Hatchet?
cool. It's all of the films, all of them uncut. Because on streaming, he realized that some people are watching them. Some streaming services don't have the uncut versions, so people would be like, "Hey, did you see this thing in the movie?" And he's like, and they'd be like, "No, that wasn't in the version I watched." And Adam's like, "Which version did you watch?" Physical media, and they're all there with all the special features. The steelbook looks great, and he added two additional special features, like 2 hours of stuff, a roundtable with him and the cinematographer Will Barrett, Sarah Albert, the producer, just telling stories that they haven't really told before. And on the first film, he had production diaries that went up on the website, like hatchetmovie.com. And he had everyone who wrote them come in and record them over a slideshow. So it feels like a sleepaway camp presentation, like what we did at camp, which is cool. It's just a cool love letter to the series. Still looks great. I made a mistake. I thought it was 4K. It's not. It's Blu-ray, so it's the same quality visuals that you've seen before. But yeah, now it's all in one place, at least until he makes another Victor Crowley movie, if that's the case, because he pointed out, as everyone always says, "Oh, this is the definitive edition, the complete collection." And it's like, well, what if there are more movies? We don't know, which is not something he confirmed, but maybe someday. Who knows? But that was cool. That was a definite highlight for me.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I actually picked up the signed copy from the Arioscope website. So
Nice.
I need to make my way through these because I've only seen the only one I haven't seen actually is Hatchet 3. I've seen the other three before. So
That's fine.
I'll get around to it. I remember loving the first one quite a bit. But it's been so long since I've seen the rest of them.
I
So
rewatched
yeah.
this one, and it's still a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, who would have thought you'd take? I mean, again, I think Victor Crowley doesn't always get his flowers, but before art, there were other new modern horror slasher icons. So
Yeah. Did it never stop?
yeah, speaking of slasher icons,
Oh yeah, Marcus Dunstan. Hell yeah.
yeah, so was fortunate enough to have a conversation with Marcus Dunstan, which will go up in about a week or so. But it's in promotion for his new film, All My Friends Are Dead, which, review coming soon on Macabre Daily, but I will call this out and say that this is a lot. This is a really fun movie that you're gonna have to get past the first 30 minutes of. Um, because there's a lot that's going to cause people to want to turn away from this in the first 30 minutes. But if you give it a shot, it will actually pay off in a really solid way. And So high recommend. It's a little bit goofy, kind of off the wall editing, almost music video style. But yeah, this is coming out on August 2nd. And yeah, Marcus was a extremely generous interviewee. He did also confirm that we're getting a third collector movie. It's now outside of Wright's Hell, and it's back in the hands of people that can make it things happen. So hopefully that'll be the next project he's working on. But yeah, this will be up on the site of review in the next week or two. Same with the interview. And
Cool.
last but not least, we got a new Addams Family movie coming out.
I know they're ridiculously prolific. I love it.
They
Yeah,
this looks wild. I mean, what is Hellhole?
I don't know. They shot it in with Todd Masters, the famous Todd Masters. And I think it's their first film. I mean, all their films are indies, they're all handmade, but I feel like this is the first one where they have a production company behind them. So, and they're in another country instead of on their compound in upstate New York. So, I think it's going to be a bit of a departure for them. But honestly, the Adams family with a budget, that sounds unstoppable to me. Like, I can't wait. And Andrews Hove shows up. I don't know as who the trailer's not out yet. Hopefully, I'll get a screener before the end of the month. But really looking forward to this, and great poster too. Like,
Yeah.
my God, yeah, it's like their version of the Thing. Essentially, is the elevator pitch. But I'm psyched for it.
August is gonna, I don't think we can say this enough, but Shudder is single-handedly saving the horror genre. It's
That's
not the
fair.
only thing working in service of saving it, but it is certainly the strongest arm lifting it up. I'm behind on some Shudder releases, which I need to watch, but there's the most recent one, the Austrian one, that's supposed to be very good.
Oh,
Which is Devil's something, Devil's Bath, yeah, it's supposed to be really fucked up. Um, so
definitely.
yeah, and this is a sign that Shudder is doing the right things. My mom, who is 72 years old, asked me if I've seen The Devil's Bath and where she could download Shudder. My mom does not watch horror movies, not a big horror movie fan, but she heard that The Devil's Bath was really good, and that's a Shudder original, and it's the only place you can see it. So I think horror is finally clawing its way into the hearts and minds of the normies. But anyways, that's the news, or at least some of the news for now. But we didn't mention at the beginning of this episode, but our top five this month is in service of the new M. Night Shyamalan movie Trap, which is coming out, I believe, this Friday, July
Uh,
29th.
I think it's August 2nd, isn't it?
Oh, yep,
First.
maybe. I'm not sure. Either way, it's coming out soon, in the next couple of weeks. It looks interesting, as all M. Night Shyamalan movies do. And I'm sure all of us have our own guesses on what the ending can be. I'm surely already have mine. But we thought in celebration of this, I think it's his like 12th or 13th movie he's directed. Um, we
Mhm.
would do a top five M. Night Shyamalan movies. So, Lowell, first, this was a great idea you had, and I'm curious to know, was this easy? Was this an easy list for you to put together?
Mm, mostly. I mean, I think for anyone who loves and, let's face it, defends him, has like a solid at least top three. I imagine we have the same number one, but I'm not sure. But anything after that is kind of a grab bag. But he still has good stuff. I mean, I saw someone online say he made great movies and then he made terrible movies and now he makes decent Twilight Zone episodes. And I'm just like, go to hell. He knows
Yeah,
how to do a movie. And the thing the thing I always thought with him was, no matter, you can't call him a hack. It's the same thing with Rob Zombie because he zeroes in on whatever he's making. If the script is great, it's going to be a great movie. If it's not, it's going to suck, but it still might look visually interesting. He's a
yeah,
little bit hard to pin down, but that era not long ago when everyone was like, oh, the hell with this guy. I mean, yeah, Last Airbender sucked, but he made it for his kids. But it's he just needs to be in the zone. And I feel like the films that I chose were especially in the zone. I don't I think he has made more than five good films, but these are my favorite, and at least one I'll defend to the death. But yeah, what about you?
This was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be because I wouldn't consider myself like a fan, but I will defend
Well,
him.
neither would I, but like good recognizes good when it comes
Yeah,
to him. Yeah.
and I definitely would defend him if anyone were to say he's a hack or talentless or whatever, because I don't think those are even remotely close to being true. I think the problem people have with him is just that he does have a formula. Everything kind of hinges on a twist, and if you don't like that twist, then you're not going to like the movie. But even in my list, there are some where the twist doesn't work, but it's still the movie's still rock solid regardless. So I agree with you in that I think he does know what he's doing. I think he also is just very much a impulsive filmmaker. I feel like he doesn't, probably doesn't go through a lot of rounds of editing. Just kind of like I have this idea, get it down, churn it into a screenplay, have a couple people look at it, and then get it made.
He's one of those people like who we were, I think Oz Perkins, where it's like maybe he needs a writer in addition. Like he's great visually, but with some things he could use another eye on the script, which he doesn't have often. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, in any case, most people would benefit from another pair of eyes on most things. But in his case, again, it's just like, does that twist work or not? Because even some of his movies that aren't great, like I'll just call one out that I didn't, The Village. It's not that The Village is a bad movie. It's just the twist is so obnoxiously bad that you're like, holy fuck, I don't buy any of this now. So again, not all, that's one person's opinion. But anyways, we belabored the point too long. What's the first movie on your top five list?
I actually ranked these, and I don't
Okay.
need notes to know because I looked. But my number five controversial choice, as some of them will be, is Knock at the Cabin, his latest one.
Oh, that's my number
And
five.
yeah, it's really good, and I love the Paul Tremblay book. It is the Cabin at the End of the World that it's based on, but it is not necessarily that book. It takes a huge left turn towards the end, and it turned a lot of people off. But I went with it, and I liked it, and you know, my wife doesn't really like super ambiguous endings, like uncomfortably ambiguous. But she loved, and that's what Paul Tremblay does, really. But she loved his book, A Head Full of Ghosts. But she didn't read the book. She saw the movie, and when the movie was over, I told her how the book ended, and she thought about it, and she's like, "No, if you're going to make that change in the movie, then that's the perfect ending for the movie." I know this is kind of vague for people who haven't seen it, but I'm like, yeah, that does kind of make sense. I don't think this movie has a hateful bone in its body, honestly, but it's really well made. Shyamalan absolutely knew the story he was telling. He understood the book. Great characters, and Dave Batista. There is a case that he is the best wrestler turned actor of all time. I mean, up until this point, certainly, but like just quietly outpacing The Rock at every turn. Just this, I was holding my breath. I'm like, is he gonna mess this up? Because I like Shyamalan, but he might mess it up, and he did. I dug it.
I did not read the book, so I don't have the same frame of reference, which I'm not, there's nothing to be disappointed by, which is good in my case. But I agree with everything you said in that it works really well. Like the way the story is told is extremely engaging. It leans into Shyamalan's strengths, which is that he's very good with having like, character development. I think one of the strengths in a lot of his stories is that you actually care about the people in them. Even if you don't always root for them, you get to know them, you understand them, you empathize with them. So in this case, he does a really good job of characterizing a lot of people that you have to get to know very fast in situations that are not unique or that are not normal by any stretch. And I thought the way it ends is really, slow building tension that is persistent and engaging throughout. There's no dull moments, there's no drop off point. It just goes and goes until things go off in the third act, and then you just watch it all happen. So yeah, that was my number five as well. absolutely love. I surprised I liked it as much as I did because, again, it wasn't something that was kind of on my radar as being something that I'd be keen on or even interested in. So, what's your next one up?
Um, okay, now we're getting into controversial territory, but you know, also like you were saying, not a lot of movies scare me. This one really creeped me the hell out. And it was honestly disorienting to see so many people shit on it immediately afterwards. It was really one of those like, did we watch the same movie? And that's The Happening,
Hmm.
which Mark Wahlberg almost ruins. He doesn't, but he almost does. He is dreadfully miscast. And he even like made fun of it in later years. And I'm like, dude, you're the worst part about it. Like, shut your mouth. Um, it's terrifying. Like, what if the Earth released pheromones that made humans kill themselves as a sort of like, white blood cell, you know, coping strategy? And I still have images from that movie burned in my brain. It's really good at showing like how people calmly they pretend to be calm in the face of an emergency, but inside they're like boiling. I thought he captured that really well. John Leguizamo's great. Zoe Deschanel, just it's and at the time I remember I thought like the climax was kind of dumb, but then I thought about it and I'm like, no, actually that makes sense narratively. I like it. Yeah, just I think it's his most underrated movie by far.
Hmm.
But yeah, my number four.
This is the one I've probably seen the least amount of times because I saw it once and I don't remember a thing about it. So we didn't even, so this is a good reminder for me to revisit it because,
Tell me if I'm crazy because I have I saw it in the theater and I'm just like in my chair. It was just one of those like, oh god, like
but that
all the way.
also was released around the time when it was kind of cool to shit on him. Like,
Yeah.
there's been after like I think what was trying to think chronologically here.
After,
Somewhere,
Lady in the Water, which was
yeah.
like it was the village, Lady in the Water, and then The Happening. I believe maybe something. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was right after the village was when he started to become really cool to shit on him.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Lady in
and
really sent it home, and then this.
Yeah, and so maybe it was just like it came out at a time when it was cool to drop a load on Shyamalan, but now it's not. So which reads my fourth one, which is his comeback film, Split. Um, I think Split works so much better if it wasn't a part of this greater M. Night Shyamalan comic book universe.
Mm.
But the fact that it is a part of that doesn't really hurt the movie as much as it just kind of weakens the greatness of the story. And we'll be forthright in saying that Split is an extremely cartoonish version of split personality disorder, to an extreme. But I think, again, what pays off is the performances. James McAvee absolutely loses his goddamn mind and he puts on one hell of a show when he changes into the different personas. And it's genuinely I don't want to call it an interesting or like a terrifying movie because it's not really terrifying, but it's really good at keeping the suspense up high the entire time, especially as it nears towards this kind of absurd ending. Which again, I don't hate the ending. I just don't love the connections that it's leading towards because I don't think those panned out for it in the long run. I think as a standalone single thing, it works so much better. But that shouldn't negate the fact that again, it does what Shyamalan does really well. Tells good stories that are contained. Like I think his best movies are actually the ones where they are somewhat smaller in scope. It's just a couple of people just being weird or just something happening to them. Um, and yeah, this is one I'm excited to actually go back and revisit again because I've only seen it. I think I saw it once in the theaters, but I watched it again on a plane. And so this is one I'd like to go back to at some point because I think again, even though I know the twist, if you will, once you know the twist in his best movies, they're more just about enjoying the way you get there because like other filmmakers, he does leave good breadcrumbs.
It's funny. This is the one I think I've seen the least. No, that would well, or yeah, one. This is maybe his best one that I've seen the least. I'll put it that way. I've seen the bad ones too, but just once, and that was enough. But I do remember I liked it. Um, but I do want to revisit it. I love that James McAvoy is just making a meal out of it, and it's fun to watch. You know, it's not like Shyamalan's like, "All right, just go crazy and we'll record it." And he's like, "Yay!" It's a really he has a really creepy smile when he wants to. And yeah, just seeing him unleash was cool. And, great supporting turn from Anya Taylor Joy. Though I don't think this was his comeback movie. I think he had one before this that I'm
Oh,
guessing you
okay.
didn't put on your list. I don't know. I would consider that one his comeback movie. It didn't make my list, but it almost did. But
It's probably not on my list now that you're thinking of now you're saying it, but go ahead.
yeah,
What is it?
the visit.
Oh, it is on my list. Okay.
Oh, damn it. Um, yeah, anyway, so
Well,
what's your number?
what's the third on your list?
The Sixth Sense.
Okay, that's his number one on mine.
Okay. I mean it introduced us to him. I think it was his second movie, but still it's the one that broke it all out. It's very well made. I mean, it's a little cold. I don't quite connect to it the way a lot of people did. In fact, when I saw it after it was so hyped up when it was the movie of the summer, and I was like, this is good, but like it's not the kind of movie like it's not the kind of movie I can imagine playing everywhere. And B, it's not the kind of movie I can imagine people like losing their minds over, except for the twist. Because it's just kind of like a cold, methodical character piece.
Hmm.
It's almost like there is no plot for a while, and that's fine. It is one of the best Bruce Willis performances ever. Haley Joel Osment, like, is in the child actor pantheon. He's great. Toni Collette, which people forget about, but she's in it. She's awesome. Yeah, and I know a lot of people would rank this number one. I wouldn't, as I'm gonna tell you in a bit, but yeah.
I mean, my number two and my number one are it's a coin toss almost. But I'll come back to this when we get to my number one as to why I put it there. My number three is The Visit, which
Mm.
I had to make sure that he actually directed it because there's movies that he's produced like Devil where he didn't where his name's plastered all over it, but
Shyamalan movie, but it's not. I mean, he had his hands in it, but no, the visit is like you think he's real quick. It's like, oh, Shyamalan's doing found footage. Oh man, the mighty really have fallen, but it's really good.
it's really good.
But it is
And I think um I think he takes something that I think he takes a universal fear of the elderly and like actually explains it in a very human way, even though it kind of, I don't know, one could read it as being kind of like a using mental health in the wrong way. But I would say that that's a bit of a stretch. What I would point kind of counter back with is that The Visit is the absolute worst trip to grandma's house ever. And there are
I
some truly amazing scenes in there, like the underneath the house scene or
well,
sequence is just so good and it's genuinely creepy in parts. I don't like found footage, and this found footage movie works for me. And again, part of it's because of the way that the found footage is sold to, and is germane to the environment. There is some weird stuff like the kind of cringy singing that they do, but whatever. We can see past that. Kids are kids. I dug this one. I've seen it a couple of times. And again, it works. It works so well for what it's trying to do. It's a simple story, told really well. It has all the things you come to expect from Shyamalan, like because diverting your attention and different think, a bunch of red herrings splattered everywhere, and then a profound twist, which is completely feels implausible, but the more you think about it, makes complete sense. So yeah, I love it. And it's also just one of the more, I mean, the ending isn't, yeah, not to spoil anything. It's not a bad ending. It's actually like a perfect ending for what through the for what for like it's like a child's version of a horror movie almost in that way.
mm,
So I dug this one quite a bit on number
yeah.
three. I feel like I know your number two and your number one though. I'm
Well,
gonna
I
write them down.
wait. Yes, it would be number two and number one. Okay. Are we up to my number two? Is that
We
where we are?
are.
Okay. Um, oh man, I run the risk of you not talking to me again after this because I know people who hate this movie. Like I have a running joke with one of my friends who hates it so much, and I
It's
for her
unbreakable, isn't it?
no, what the fuck? Are you kidding? I no, it's Signs.
Oh, wait, who the hell hates Signs?
I people hate Signs. I have one of my friends when she got married, along with her wedding gift, I also slipped in a DVD of Signs, like just to mess with her. She just hates it so much, and I just think it's hilarious how much she and other people hate it. I remember when I went to college and I was part of the dramatic writing conservatory. We took classes with film students, and one of them was telling me like Signs came out like it was like the year before, and he was in some kind of program where they showed upcoming movies that like didn't get wide releases yet to people, and like the professor would talk about the movies afterwards, and they watched Signs, and when it was over, the professor was like, "Yes, yeah, sometimes you just learn what not to do." And it was just understood, oh, it's a shitty movie, and everyone left. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's terrifying. And yeah, you can give me that shit about, oh, they came to a planet that's like 70% of what kills them. They don't know that.
That's
They don't.
that's the only part. So that's when I said earlier that M. Night Shyamalan sometimes, even when he totally biffs the ending, lands the, he loses the battle, but he still wins the war.
Yeah.
And it Signs is that movie. It's because it is, and Signs is my number two as well. So it's but like Signs, that is a really, really big. You could have literally done anything else than except water, and it would have made more sense. But putting that aside, everything leading up to
Also,
that moment fucking works. And it
yeah.
has, bar none, one of the scariest scenes ever committed to celluloid when he's sitting in that fucking closet watching the Mexican broadcast and
Mm, yep.
the alien walks by. I still, like, I get
Everyone,
shivers still talking about it.
everyone remembers where they were when they saw that. Everyone, legitimately terrifying.
Or the
And the
closet, like that closet
door,
scene is fucking
yeah,
great.
it's a great fucking movie. It is. Like what I don't like. I don't even care that Mel Gibson's in it. I actually bought the Mad Max 4K, like the original Mad Max 4K from the Kino sale, and I was like, at a second, like, oh, I guess I just bought a Mel Gibson movie, but it's Mad Max, and like cinema's king. That's a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation. But it's great. It's definitely the last great thing he did. Joaquin Phoenix is excellent in it, and it's just you're there's this pervasive sense that like yeah the aliens are here, they might be taking over the world, and these people that we are following are not going to stop them, and it's terrifying. It's like a slow motion, well there's a car crash in it, but like yeah, like a slow motion car crash. It's yeah, yeah, okay, except for that twist, it is top tier Shyamalan.
It
It's
is the most realistic version of what would potentially happen if aliens that had malicious intent actually came here. It
yeah.
explains a lot of things that have been previously been like, it uses things like crop circles and uses them in very interesting ways to explain an approach and a strategy. It, takes what we have, well, at the time, even before that, the kind of predominating perception of what an alien would be was like little green man into the gray guys, and it
Yeah.
took a little bit of all that and made it scary, like genuinely scary. The
Mhm.
tension, I mean, one thing that he doesn't get enough credit for that I think we've mentioned a couple times here is that he's really good at building sense, and building and releasing tension. He
Mhm.
has some genuinely great set piece. I mean, hell, even the whole daughter's little quirkiness with the glass of water, like that's a great payoff. A great payoff. And it works because he has a deep understanding of his characters and their motivations. He writes them extremely well. I mean, you have like Mel Gibson's character is the most vanilla of them all, but even still, you have this Joaquin Phoenix as the brother character, which is amazingly well done. Like, there's so much depth to that character without having to know anything about him, his history, just the way they talk. Yeah, I think Signs is not just it's one of the best horror alien horror movies of all time.
Oh yeah,
Um,
it walked so no one will say you can run. Like
Yeah.
there's a direct line between those two.
And I don't think there has been as many any good like as good alien invasion movies since Signs, to be honest. Granted, at least they take it as seriously. Because I don't know when Mars Attacks came out, but Mars Attacks is bar none.
96.
Yeah.
Or,
So
yeah. Mhm.
but yeah, it's totally different. So but I would definitely be, I don't know, hate's a strong word to lob at a movie like Signs. I could see that for other movies. Like I think the first one you're going to talk about, might be one that you could lob that word at, but I don't
I
know,
can't
Signs.
joking or not, but okay, we'll get
I'm
to it.
pretty sure I know what you're. It's Unbreakable.
It's
Yeah.
after her.
Oh, after. Oh, it is after. Okay,
No, it's
there's no
not.
possible way.
Are you fucking kidding me? You think I would pick? No,
No, I don't. But but
no.
I had to make sure because your poker face was really good in that moment.
I know I have a really good poker face, even though I am a terrible liar. But yeah, no. Number one, Unbreakable, masterpiece, absolute fucking masterpiece. Um, and easy for people to watch it and think that he entered the sophomore slump after Sixth Sense, but no, he is leveling up. This is a it is a thriller, a superhero movie, and a horror movie, all through the lens of M. Night Shyamalan, and it makes sense. Like what he sets up, what the rules are. Like you do believe that these people could be out there, you know? Like it's not hokey. It's like, and there'd be no like heroes without it. Like heroes is
Yeah.
just taking it and running with it. But another one of the best Bruce Willis performances. Um, I understood a lot of people are scratching their heads after this, but it's so fucking great. I mean, some of the like postscript at the end kind of, I don't think you necessarily needed it, but otherwise that ending, just like I stumbled out of the theater. I was like, oh my God, that was a twist that really worked for me. And just, oh, God, it's so good. That's a Steelbook 4K I am proud to own.
I do not understand this movie's like, and I don't want to say I don't understand it because I get it, but I've tried so many times with this movie, and I don't dislike it either. I don't hate it.
Your
That's
number one?
no, Sixth Sense is my
Oh,
number one. It's
oh,
not even
right.
on my top five because the thing is, like, it is I will agree with some of what you said in that it is a very good, it is the most grounded superhero film ever made, and it succeeds extremely well at laying out the rules for a grounded superhero movie and following them extremely well. You have two really interesting characters in Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis. More Samuel L. Jackson character being more interesting than Bruce Willis's, but nevertheless, it's just to me, it's like it's so bland, even though that's the point. Like it's supposed to be so grounded. It's too grounded for me. That I just kind of like I enjoy why like it's a good movie, just not a favorite of mine. And I think it's because it just doesn't for me. I don't the horror stuff I don't get out of it, and I think that's where I appreciate more of Shyamalan's work in is like more as a kind of horror thriller. This was more of kind of his take on like a very vibey superhero movie.
But also barely a superhero movie. And it is kind of barely, it is barely a horror movie. It is barely a superhero movie. It is a thriller, I think, more than anything. But like the little pieces of it come together to make something like really unique. And Glass was okay. We didn't need it, not at all. But man, I want to watch this right now. I want to watch this and Aja's Hills Have Eyes like back to back right now.
I That's an interesting pairing, first of all, but also
As we just talked about, it might not work, but just because we were talking about Aja before, but yeah.
but I would not fault anyone for this being their number one because I do understand why people like it so much. It's just for me, it's just it doesn't ever rise on the decibel meter. Like it never gets loud enough for me to be totally in. But I get it. My number one is Sixth Sense, which as I was thinking about my number one, I almost made it Signs instead of Sixth Sense. But I think the reason I kept it at Sixth Sense is because even though the twist does kind of ruin repeat viewings, it does make the repeat viewings far richer because it probably has his best like tapestry of like plot leading up to a twist. Like I
Mhm.
can't think of any other his movies where the twist has actually worked as well as it does in The Sixth Sense. But also, there's a lot of really good performances in The Sixth Sense that are very unhinged. Like Donnie Wahlberg's performance is so creepy and weird. And you're right, there is a coldness to that movie, but I think that's kind of what I like about it is that it feels like the way, like once you know what's going on and you know the twist, you're like, oh, yeah, well, this does make sense if this is told from the perspective of, a dead person, right? Like this is clearly we're following that person, so this is the way they see the world. So it should feel cold, empty, and vacant, right? Like kind of how you imagine dead would be. Um, and I think that what this ultimately, I think there's just so much about it that works so well because it's a very simple story, right? But it's again told in an interesting way, paced extremely well with rock solid performances, and it has some real like the part under the sheet still is
Mm.
one of the creepiest scenes of all time. It's creepy and like that. You ever seen the movie The Lady in White, where it's like it's a
Oh yeah,
creepy movie, but it's not like a depressing movie. It's kind of like a happy ending
like
of
a
sorts.
dark Amblin movie, really
Yeah,
dark.
yeah. So it kind of has that vibe to it. It's like okay, everyone's okay at the end of this, but it's still a little like bittersweet in the ending. So I don't know. I think it put him on the map for a reason, and I
Mhm.
think people will go back and revisit it and say, "Wow!" Like if you haven't seen it before, it's just a really well made film. And you're right about Bruce Willis's performance in that he gives one hell of a very like subdued performance, but it's also what really works about it is that his face just doesn't really show a lot of emotion, and I think that really works for the character. So yeah, I really dig The Sixth Sense. I think it also kickstarted an entire wave of like imitations and supernatural horror that came out. I mean, even though The Others is a wildly different movie, it was 100% inspired by this one.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I hope that Trap is going to end up unseating one of my top five. Although I will be forthright in saying I think I know the twist. Uh, but I'm keen to be surprised.
I feel like the trailer already spoiled the twist, but I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
like, but I'm just putting it out there. It's not a spoiler because the movie's not out yet. But I think it's the daughter who's the killer.
Really? All right. Well, okay.
I think that's going to be the big twist. He's protecting her. But if it's not, and it is exactly as it looks like in the trailers, I think I'm still going to be enthused because Josh Hartnett is eating in it, and he's just
Yeah.
left and right. He seems to be totally owning this role as sociopathic dad of the year. So I'm all for it.
I'm excited for the Josh Hartnett assance. I always say you may think you're cool, but you'll never be Josh Hartnett in the faculty cool. I
God,
mean,
making scat in your garage? No way.
God, even just like ripping the paper cutter off the thing, like, and then just tossing it to Sean Hannity, like, god damn. Scream Factory was supposed to put out a special edition of that, and then like nothing happened.
Huh?
So I think maybe it's still in limbo. They're releasing Phantoms because Affleck is the bomb, but
Yo,
but like but like I saw, on one of those like it was listed on Amazon too. It was supposed to come out in like April, but
hmm,
they didn't make a formal announcement. But you put that shit on 4K, I'm eating
I'm
good.
buying. Oh, The
Absolutely.
Faculty is one of the most underrated, undersung heroes of the 90s in
Uh,
every genre. It hits all the marks. It takes the
uh,
perfected teen comedy that was being, really perfected in the 80s and makes it and it uses the Can't Hardly Wait, applies it to a sci-fi movie based upon Invasion of the Body Snatchers, has the
mhm.
best like cast of character actors, meets Hollywood's hottest in the 90s. Um, God, and everyone just is believable. Everyone's so believable in their role.
Firing
God, The
on
Faculty is
all
such a good movie. Such a good movie.
yeah,
Robert Rodriguez, where have you gone? Come back to us. Anyway, well,
the lead up, but yeah. Mhm. No, he's
um,
Mandalorian. He's fine. Don't worry about Robert Rodriguez.
no, I'm sure. Yeah, as long as he's still got, does he still have a TV channel, El Rey?
I don't know, but I did like that From Dusk Till Dawn show. Did you
Oh, I
ever
never
watch?
saw it. No.
It's not bad. It's 3 seasons and it has an ending, and it's
Hmm.
just interesting. Like the first season is the first movie, and then the first season goes past the first movie, and it's interesting where they take it. It's worth a watch, I'd say.
Okay. Definitely adding that to the list. I have all four of the From Dusk Till Dawn movies in some sort of compendium.
Is it
Uh,
three?
there's four discs in there. I don't know, maybe there's like the first
Oh,
season of
special.
something.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn is also a great fucking movie too.
Oh,
Anyway, we're getting off track. As we land this wobbly plane full of twists, we've
yeah.
got still a lot more horror coming out. Cuckoo's going to be released in the coming months. Trap's coming out. We have Nosferatu to look forward to in the end of the year. So there's still plenty of horror to take in, and I'm sure we'll come up and come back with another top five for you next month. But until then, be good, stay safe, and above all, watch more horror movies. Just keep watching them.
What he said.
Adios.
Peace.